And now, please help me welcome Mr. Charlie Kirk.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with all of you here tonight. I am, unfortunately, from Chicago, Illinois. So being from Chicago, I'm going to be without one of my favorite tools. I will be speaking without a teleprompter tonight, so I apologize profusely, but I've just grown so accustomed to it. You know, there's an old Mark Twain quote, "Tell the truth, it's easier to remember." You know, I just think of that all the time whenever our president reads his next thoughts. So I'm born and raised in the suburbs of Chicago, Illinois, you know, with my great Chicago accent. That the capital of community organizing, the land of Barack Obama, David Axelrod, Valerie Jarrett, and I'll add a fourth to that. A lot of people don't know this, but Hillary Clinton grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. She grew up in Park Ridge, about 15 minutes from my house. So, we, you know, instead of athletes on the walls, we just have pictures of those wonderful individuals. Anyway, I just want to give another recognition and round of applause to the young conservatives in this room. That was incredible. Not too long ago, about 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago, I was in their shoes, literally, as a senior in high school in a public institution, indoctrination factory, whatever you want to call it, in Chicago, Illinois. I had teachers that openly were Marxists and socialists that would indoctrinate and not educate and would put forth an agenda that was not even about, you know, a free flow of discussion or ideas, but it was about punishment of anyone that might ever oppose the idea of cultural Marxism, bigger government, and centralized command economy control. So here I was as a senior in high school with one goal and one dream in mind. I wanted to go to the United States Military Academy at West Point. That was my number one dream in life. So I said, well, what would probably increase my chances? So I became an Eagle Scout, and I did football, and I did basketball, did well in school, everything that you would think that would help one's journey get to West Point become easier. So I went through the process. I got nominated by my local congressman, but those of you that know the kind of journey you have to go through to get appointed, which essentially means accepted, it's a 9-month, 12-month process. It's not just you apply for a school, you have to go through interviews, so on and so forth. And unfortunately, I was waitlisted, and things kind of started to get a little bit odd, and I eventually lost my spot out to what I felt was a far less qualified applicant in my district that was of a different gender and a different persuasion. You could take it any way you want, but I knew the test scores, I knew the qualifications. I was kind of got the short end of the stick. But the positive part of it was here I was, senior in high school, very similarly to the young people in this room, constantly getting in debates, or as I like to call enlightened conversations with my teachers. And I spent a lot of time out in the hall in high school, especially in economics class, because that's what the left does. You know, they're the most intolerant group of people that you've ever met their entire life. You know, high school teachers and college professors are incredibly tolerant of other people's views as long as you share their own. So the wonderful part of that is anytime I'd use these things called facts, and I'd always remind her that facts don't have feelings. It's an interesting little thing to remind the left. I would always be kicked out into the hallway. So here I was, I kind of went through an exploration journey, I guess you could say, of what did I want to do with my life. West Point didn't really seem like an option at the time. So slowly but surely, as sports started to wind down, I had a season, if you will, the spring of my senior year, all to myself. I didn't have to show up for basketball practice. I didn't have to wake up at 5 a.m. to go lift weights for football. So I really started to open my eyes about what was happening politically, what was happening culturally in my local high school and otherwise. So here I was in the heat of the 2012 election, just as Mitt Romney was about to close his nomination. And what did I start to see? In our public high school, I started to see representatives from an organization called MoveOn.org start to come into our cafeteria, not once a week, not twice a week, but 3 or 4 times a week. And they would come in, they'd sign up kids, and they would hand out propaganda flyers, healthcare for all, climate justice, we need racial equality, all these wonderful sounding terms. And I saw there was absolutely no organization or outfit from the alternative point of view, talking about increased liberty or freedom, economic opportunity, school choice, at least some sort of balance or alternative viewpoint. So I made the first mistake. The first mistake I did was I went to the administration. Don't do that. That's just like the worst thing you could possibly do. Because then they have this litany of legality. Like, oh, no, it's just these are human values. These are human rights. Of course they're allowed to be here. So, well, what if we had some pamphlets and some flyers talking about the Constitution? No. See, that's way too. That's controversial. You don't want any of that. So that was a mistake. So then I went to the school board. That was the second mistake I made. But in retrospect, it really wasn't, because I learned a lot about the bureaucracy that is involved in trying to untangle the liberal dominance web that is in public education. So I got absolutely nowhere with the school board. So the third mistake I made, but really I learned through every single one of these consecutive steps, was I went to the Illinois Republican Party. And I said, hey, why don't we start our own grassroots type momentum movement? It can be an offshoot. We don't even have to call it Republican anything. We can call it something nonpartisan. Get into these high schools, get into the colleges, find students that might be persuadable, empower them, organize them. We won't win all of them, but even if we win 5 to 7%, the trajectory could be incredible over 30 to 40 years. And again, with the third mistake, unfortunately, out of the deans and the administration and the school board, the worst reaction of all three I got was from the Illinois Republican Party officials. They're like, oh, you're just one of those young kids, we've tried this before, so on and so forth. It doesn't work. It's they'll show up eventually for phone banks and this and that. I said, this is crazy. So I started to show up more to the Illinois Republican Party meetings, thinking I could change these people's mind. Now, mind you, Illinois is similar to California, except we actually have term limits in Illinois. 1 term in office, 1 term in jail. So it's a lot different. It's a lot different than what people might think. So trying to change the culture in Illinois was quite a task, to say the least. So I started to go to these meetings, and I started to realize I was the youngest person in the room by 70 or 80 years sometimes. This is not sustainable. And so, out of frustration and the bureaucracy that was entangled in just a failure political state at the time, a state that has seen 4 of our last 5 governors in jail, a state that has just seen incredible corruption. Unfortunately, it was bipartisan, and I was getting absolutely nowhere. But I saw the potential. I saw what the left was able to build. I saw how they were engaging young people and turning them on to a false set of ideas, indoctrinating them towards this viewpoint, and triggering them into action. I saw the potential on our side and our point of view. So I started to do a little bit more non-party outreach. I started to meet with more people, and I saw there was an incredible amount of optimism amongst older people to try to get younger organizations going and so on and so forth. So for whatever reason, I came up with this crazy idea. I pitched at my parents, and here I am at 18 years old. I said, well, what if I take 6 months off of school or a year off of school, start an organization around grassroots campus community organizing, fighting for free markets, individual liberty, and limited government. I don't get my college degree right away. It might work. It might fail. I try to raise some money, and I have my best shot at it. And they thought I was absolutely nuts, of course. They said, no, you got to go to college, you get a degree. But for whatever reason, I said, all right, give me 3 months, give me the summer. If I don't do it, I'll enroll into community college. That's it. So they gave me 90 days. So on June 5th of 2012, here I am with my graduation money in hand, $1,800 from all my relatives and everybody. Use it as my articles of incorporation. So I said, I need a name. I need something with pizzazz. I need something that can really sizzle. So I said, well, we're kind of at a turning point in this country. I still think we are. So I came up with the name, Turning Point USA. So here I am on June 5th of 2012, lacking the 2 things that you really need to succeed in politics: money and connections. So 18 years old, no money, no connections, formula for success. But I had a secret weapon. I'll tell you that in a second. And it's an interesting story. So I go month after month. I'm almost at my 68 out of 90 day window, and I wasn't having much success. Wasn't able to really raise the funding, wasn't able to get what I needed to do. So I decided to take one final risk. I decided to go down to the Republican convention in Tampa and just risk it all. Maybe I'll meet somebody that thinks that this needs to happen. Because quite frankly, and the young conservatives in this room probably will be able to echo this, there is not a sustainable youth organization out there for high schoolers, for college students to immediately be able to plug into. So I went down to Tampa, borrowed money that I did not have, And on my flight down there, I memorized all 100 of the top GOP donors out there in the country. And I said, if I run into one of them, I'm going to pitch them and hope and pray for the best. So here I am, the last day of the Republican convention, in literally a stairwell near the end. I see one of the guys' faces that I memorized. And I go right up to him, and those of you that know this guy, I know Sean knows him. His name is Foster Freeze. You can go Google him. He's an incredible guy. Self-made centimillionaire. I go right up to him. I say, Mr. Freeze, my name is Charlie Kirk. I'm 18 years old, from Chicago, Illinois, the capital of community organizing. I'm going to do exactly what MoveOn.org did in 2008, and now in 2012, I'm going to build it from the bottom up. For whatever reason, he decided to, throw a little money at us. So that was the seed funding that we needed. And yeah, it's pretty interesting. So slowly but surely, we were able to grow our organization, bit by bit, step by step, using the exact same model, mentality, tactics, and strategy that Obama for America and Organizing for Action used successfully in 2008 and unfortunately again in 2012. Grassroots first, boots on the ground, get in the trenches, clipboard and tennis shoes type of work. So fast forward really quickly where we are today. We have 47 people on our full-time staff. We're on over 1,000 campuses nationwide, college and high school. We hosted the largest Young Women's Leadership Summit in the country with over 125 of our top young women leaders. We hosted the largest Young Latino Leadership Summit event in the country. Is Angel in the audience somewhere? There's Angel back there. Give Angel a round of applause. He was one of our attendees. And we hosted one of the largest high school activism conferences. And it just started out of nowhere. Out of nowhere meaning it was just an idea I had on June 5th of 2012. So what are we doing on a daily basis, and what have we done recently? So as I mentioned, I come from Illinois, pretty passionate, Chicagoan. Through all the failures of the Chicago Cubs, we haven't won a World Series in 1,347 years. It's close. It's a variable of that. So here I am as an organization. We had our seed funding, but we're about 10 months in, and we were ready for that next step. We were ready to take really, as those of you in business know, getting seed funding is one thing, but getting to a respectable level as an organization and credibility, that's miles from just getting seed funding. So here we were, 2 to 3 people on staff in Illinois, and a gentleman pops up out of nowhere by the name of Bruce Rauner. And he says, I'm going to run for governor, I'm going to turn this state around, I'm going to be the only governor in the history of Illinois to not take a dollar from teacher union money and not go to jail. That was actually his advertisement. So a blessing came to us, and we crossed paths with him at the time. And as he was a self-made billionaire, he invested in startup companies his entire life. He invested in LA Fitness, so on and so forth, and he invested in us. And we were one of the grassroots backbones, if you will, that really helped pave the way to trigger more young people across the state. We were able to start over 110 campus groups across the state of Illinois, register nearly 10,000 new voters. In the last 30 days, our members and those people associated with our organization were able to knock on over 58,000 doors and make over 107,000 phone calls. And the cool thing is it's not just one of those stories, and then I say, but then the Chicago machine won. But it was a good story. And for the first time in a long time, there's a Republican governor in the state of Illinois, which is pretty cool. So, and the really cool thing is he overcame what almost no Republican politician was ever able to overcome, which is a mentality I was taught till I was like this old. See, when we used to vote for class president when we were in 4th grade, we did it exactly how they did it in our precincts. You vote early, you vote often. And we were taught that from a very young age. So my grandmother, she was a lifelong Republican. Knocked on doors her entire life, made phone calls, organized block walks, ran for state representative unsuccessfully, and she passed away in 1992. And she's been voting Democrat ever since. And because of that, it was nearly impossible, we thought, to win as a Republican in the home of Barack Obama, in the home of Hillary Clinton, in the home of Valerie Jarrett, in a year that Barack Obama visited the state 7 times to try to campaign for the incumbent Democratic governor The Republican wins by 180,000 votes. How is that possible? So I come here to California bearing good news that if we, in the home of Barack Obama, and the home of Hillary Clinton, and the home of Valerie Jarrett, and the home of David Axelrod, can elect a Republican by 180,000 votes when the President of the United States comes and campaigns 7 times for an incumbent Democratic governor, you guys can elect a Republican again in California. And so how do we do it? And looking as an autopsy in Illinois, how is this possible? First and foremost, we believed in the grassroots first and foremost. And I mean we as a movement, because it really was a movement in Illinois. It was a movement to save the state. And we have already seen dramatic changes in Illinois that you wouldn't believe. So I hear you have these things called high taxes. Well, we really invented those in Chicago. You just stole it. They just went west. We had a 5% income tax. Thanks to a Republican governor, we repealed it down to 3.5%. Before, we had absolutely no representation in the union negotiating table. I can only imagine what that must be like, right? Now we're finally getting balanced, comprehensive pension reform, step by step by step. And I come here telling you, the way we won in Illinois was quite simple. It was three main things. Number one, we had a superstar candidate. We had a guy that put $27 million of his own money into the campaign. And he went on TV and he said this, and I wish Mitt Romney would have said this. He said, I'm a billionaire. I can't be bought. I can't be sold. I believe what I believe. I do what I say I'm going to do. And he won. It's pretty amazing. Number two, he believed in the grassroots. He believed in organizations like ours. He had 100 offices in the state of Illinois. Just think about that. 100 field offices. If you added up all the offices that Mitt Romney had in Virginia, Ohio, and Florida, he only had 67 offices. He had more offices in Illinois than Mitt Romney had in 3 crucial battleground states. And third and foremost, I think the most important, his message was so spot on. He did not talk about social issues at all. He did not allow them to distract from his campaign. He talked about corruption in Illinois and Springfield, which you guys have plenty of in Sacramento. I mean, you guys could run 5 gubernatorial campaigns on all the material that you have. He talked about lowering taxes, and the best thing, I know I'm talking a lot about him, but I think it's important for in California. It's a model, and it's a model for victory. He went into the inner city neighborhoods, and he looked at those pastors in the eye, and he looked at those families, and he said this, I believe a zip code should not determine a child's future. Public sector teacher unions are preventing young children in your communities from getting a higher education, and I will liberate them from that system. And it worked. You should applaud that. It's incredible. And in a precinct where Barack Obama won 98%, he was able to win like 23, 24%, which is absolutely incredible. And it's because of a good message, a belief in the grassroots, and a really, really stellar candidate. So as you start to explore and try to bring California back to where it once was, understand that if we did it, you can as well. So as an organization, what we're doing on a daily basis, we're in 1,000 campuses, colleges, and high school across the country. Like I said, we have 47, 48 people on our staff, a couple part-time mixed in there, and it fluctuates, back and forth. What are they doing on a daily basis? As we all know, as we're kind of seeing in the Middle East with ISIS, if you want to win a war, you need people on the ground. It seems that the Republican Party at large have been very invested in running TV ads, radio advertisements, and buying billboards. We want none of that. We don't want any part of it. We want boots on the ground, people in the trenches, fighting this fight on a daily basis. So it's quite simple. It's as quite simple as going to Ohio State University, setting up a booth, setting up a table with 17, 18, 19, 20 young people, and recruiting other young people and talking about these ideas and signing them up, registering them to vote, getting their information. And you might ask yourself, how was Barack Obama able to do this? That is exactly what he did. And let me tell you a quick story on that. So here I am in the fall of 2012, visiting Ohio State University. It was about October 8th. And this was after we got our seed funding. We were starting to grow. So I visited one of our startup chapters at Ohio State University. So I had a meeting with them, and we decided to go to the football game. And the football game ended, and we went back to campus. And I kid you not, I saw 14 paid staffers, Obama for America t-shirts and all, with clipboard and tennis shoes, literally dragging kids to precincts to vote. And I mean, you've heard, and there's nothing illegal about that, by the way. It takes intense work. It takes getting there years in advance, knowing your base, and then deploying it. And they got there, and they knew exactly the individuals they had to grab. They knew the dorm rooms they had to knock on. They knew the cell phones they had to text. They knew the emails they had to ping. They knew the Twitter handles they had to mention. And some of their job, literally, you look at their clipboards. And I went up to some of them and I had conversations. I said, what are you doing here? Well, these are the 40 names. I have to make sure that they vote in the next 48 hours. And then they get another 40 names. And they get another 40 names. They get another. But where are those names coming from? Well, they don't appear. They're not just bought by some big donor. They were created and they were recruited and they were identified for months on months and months and months ahead of time. So how do we build anything as comparable on our side? That's exactly what our organization is doing on a daily basis. So when you think about it, there's 58,000 people that go to The Ohio State University. And I'm focusing on Ohio State because that's actually a city within a very important state when you think about it. One particular campus. 58,000 young people. Barack Obama was able to get more than 23,000 votes out of that particular campus. Absolutely incredible. Mitt Romney was not even able to surface 5,000 votes. Now, if you're trying to tell me there's not more than 5,000 people that go to Ohio State University that are Republican and conservative, so if you 55,000, I didn't graduate from college, so I'm not a math major. 55,000, 5,000 votes, that's less than 10%. So less than 10% of that kind of magnitude school voted for Mitt Romney. Think about that. That's incomprehensible. And in my opinion, it's inexcusable. And it can be fixed, and it can be done with the right type of outreach and the right type of engagement. And that's exactly what the left has been able to do so successfully over the last couple of years. So that's our organization, that's what we do, and I can elaborate that on more in a little bit. But before I open up the questions, I just kind of want to get a little bit into the issues. What is mattering to young people? How do we message to young people? What are the issues at large that are really going to be dominant in the 2016 election cycle? So one that really rings true to me, and one that I tried to get the people at the RNC and so on and so forth to pay attention, because I knew this was going to be an issue. And for some people in this room, the high schoolers, you're not going to feel it yet, but you will. And the Democrats have masterfully created this into, my opinion, one of the largest wedge issues in the history of politics. And it's very similar to that. I think we're going to see a divide so great that if we do not have a response to this issue, you'll see 70–80% of young people voting Democratic or liberal. And what issue am I talking about? It's the student loan issue. What they have done successfully over the last 30 to 40 years is, first of all, make no mistake, young people are in debt today because of the federal government. And we need more politicians to say that. Make no mistake of that. So 93% of all student loans are given out by the federal government. 93% of all student loans are given out by the federal government. It's absolutely incredible. So let me get this straight, and I always say this somewhat facetiously to a younger audience if they're in support of student loan forgiveness. The very same entity that got you into debt is now acting surprised and feeling really sorry for you that you're suffering and in debt, and now they're waving a magic wand and they want to forgive you from the very same people, which happens to be themselves, who got you into debt. It's asinine. I like to say this. We are giving away money we do not have to young people to study degrees that do not matter, to try and go find jobs that do not exist. And that sums it up in a soundbite. There are so many structural problems with our higher education system, and I can kind of nail them one by one. Number one, we have a mentality in this country that if you do not go to college, you are somehow less intelligent and you are a stupid individual. That has got to stop, and it's got to stop from all levels. I told my peers, well, I'm not going to go to college. What's wrong with you? Why aren't you going to? I thought you were a smart kid. I'm not kidding. I got that all the time. I know young people that decided not to go to college, that became mechanics, that became plumbers and carpenters, that are now making six figures, laughing at their colleagues that are now $200,000 in student loan debt, making frappuccinos for them at 7 o'clock in the morning. This whole idea that you have to go to college to be successful is not true. Now, if you want to be a doctor or an engineer, or you want to be a skilled pathway, absolutely. But we need to look at college in the paradigm of career preparation and not obligatory accreditation, right? So it should not be a rite of passage. It should not be something that every individual has to get to succeed. So what does the left say? Hillary Clinton will get up on stage wearing an orange jumpsuit, I hope, because I love when she wears orange. It just fits her so perfectly, I hope. And she says, all these Republicans say that you shouldn't go to college, blah, 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 but if you go to college, then you are going to earn more money in the future, and she has this wonderful chart that proves her point. Probably all the young people have heard someone in your life say that. Now, what's the fatal flaw of that statistic? The fatal flaw that our Republican politicians almost never call out a fallacy on her. You should say, true, comma, Secretary Clinton, if you graduate. Half of students that enter Big Ten universities will not graduate. Half. The national graduation rate right now is a little bit above 61%. So, yes, if you're in the lucky 61%, you might earn more over the next 30 to 40 years. However, that's only if you study something that actually means something. So, take my friend Carl, who's a couple years older than I am, went to Brown University, good school. However, they had this fun thing at Brown, which is part of a vaster social experiment, which means you can kind of design your own college degree. It's this really weird trend going on in America. So he was always passionate about medieval history and stuff like that. So he ended up studying, his degree says Eastern Medieval History. I'm like, what is that? So he has $200,000 in student loan debt, and he has a degree in Eastern Medieval History. Well, whenever I see him at Starbucks, coincidentally, he's always serving drinks there, I always give him such a hard time. I say, was it really worth it? And he says, well, honestly, no, it didn't prepare me any better, but I'm good at Trivial Pursuit. And he says it somewhat jokingly. So that's if you graduate and if you study something that matters. So that's a whole different department that we need to start to talk about in regards of higher education. So let's talk about it from a political point of view. What the Democrats have done, and unfortunately what the Republicans have agreed to, is they have manufactured a student loan crisis in this country that is far worse than the housing crisis, that is far worse than the dot-com bubble. Because we're dealing, quite frankly, with not just people's houses and their 401ks, we're dealing with the next 40, 50, 60 years of their life. We are destroying young people's futures because of political opportunism of one political party. I kid you not, and I'm convinced of this. I believe the Democrats get up every single day. Boy, would I love to be a Democrat sometimes. Because they get up every single day and they say, I just have to get more people dependent on the federal government. That's what they do. They wake up every single day and they say, I'm going to give you something if you give me a vote in return. Wouldn't it be great to do that for one day? Just to go up and say, Sean, I'm going to give you a new bow tie, but I need your vote. That's what they do. Where do I sign? Exactly. So what do they do with young people? Well, we're still not able to beat that 75% threshold with young people. We're struggling with this, we're struggling with that. How about we get them really, really far into financial individual debt, blame it on Wall Street, because that always sounds good, promise them forgiveness. We don't even have to deliver it. We can give it a little bit of an inch at a time, and we'll have them voting our way forever. I am convinced that is exactly what is going on right now, and no one is calling it for what it is. See, the Democratic politicians, similarly to other communities, have loved to make people dependent on the federal government. That's what they exist to do. See, they judge success. You ever notice Barack Obama always judges his success by how many people are getting on to federal government assistance, not getting off of it. We used to be a country where presidents would brag about how many people got off of food stamps every month, not got onto food stamps every month. They live every single day to try to grow the federal scope of government, which then interferes with the natural, I believe, spirit of what it means to be an American, self-reliant, so on and so forth. So when it deals with young people, you're going to have Hillary Clinton come up and promise a form of student loan forgiveness. She's going to promise free community college. She's going to promise all of this, and she doesn't want to deliver any of it. She just wants one thing. She just wants your vote. That's all she wants. But that would not have been possible. None of that narrative would have ever resonated with young people if it wasn't for the federal government pumping in trillions of dollars into a broken higher education system. Now imagine if you were a business and you only succeeded with 61% of your customers, and a majority of the service that you delivered, the people who went away from your service never got anything of equal or greater return. Not to mention, you give everyone in your business raises, and everyone pays in full, and everyone wants to always come to your business every year. That's what we have in higher education and college. Because of a couple things, as I mentioned. We have a stigma in this culture that you must go to school to be successful, that you're stupid if you do not get a degree. I was told that many people in this room, I'm sure, had it around. We need to, first of all, push back against that. And we need to push on the faulty data and say, you don't need to get a 4-year degree to be successful. You can go to a technical school, you can enter the workforce, so on and so forth. So, as you can see, that's one of my most passionate issues. But if we do not talk about this issue correctly, we're going to get up on stage, whether we nominate Marco Rubio or Scott Walker or Ted Cruz or any of our, I think, above average candidates. Hillary Clinton will promise free stuff. The consultants are going to tell our candidates to promise less free stuff, and we will lose that argument time and time again. The only way to ever win that argument is to tell the truth and to look Hillary Clinton in the eye and say, you are deliberately lying to young people to get their vote. You have stolen their money enough. I'm going to promise them freedom and not free stuff. That's the only way we'll ever win a vote. So before I open it up for questions, I'm about in the time realm of, I'm good, cool. So some other issues that will pop up with young people, and I'm convinced that if we do not properly reach out, what always bothered me most, there's a lot of things that bother me. Look, I think Mitt Romney would have made a great president, but he was probably one of the worst people we could have nominated as a candidate to message to young people. So here's a guy that you say, so who's running your Twitter strategy? A Twitter? What's that? That's a to tweet? No, I'm not really sure. That's what he said. When he was asked, I'll never forget this, when he was asked about NASCAR, who remembers this? He's like, oh, I know a lot of people that own NASCAR teams. I mean, he looks like the guy, when you go to buy a picture frame at Target, his family is like in the frame. That's who Mitt Romney is. And I liked Mitt Romney, and I wish he would have been president. He was a genuine, authentic, nice man. But he was not the guy that we should have put up to communicate to the fastest growing demographic in the history of America. That's right. It is the fastest growing demographic in the history of America. 1 million young people turn 18 every month. 1 million young people turn voting age every single month. So let's do some math. From the time that Barack Obama beat Mitt Romney and the time that we're going to have to face the Democrats again on November 6th of 2016, 24 million new 18-year-olds, 18 to 20-year-olds will be on the voting rolls. That's absolutely incredible. So, if you ask me, we need to nominate a candidate, whomever that might be, and I'm sure I'm going to get a question, well, who is that candidate, Charlie? I don't know. That's up for you guys to decide. We need to nominate a candidate who can not just talk the language of young people, but go onto the mediums of communication where young people exist, whether it be Comedy Central, whether it be the late night talk shows, whether it be understanding the difference between Facebook or Reddit or Twitter or Snapchat, so on and so forth. And I believe firmly that this generation can be and will be won over by our set of ideas. And here's the quick soundbite. I've lived through 3 presidents in my lifetime. 3, believe it or not, just 3 presidents. Bill Clinton, impeached, that ended up well. George W. Bush, who exited with the worst approval ratings of almost any president, like him or not, that's just a fact. I grew up watching in my social studies class Fahrenheit 9/11 as curriculum, which was Michael Moore's film, as curriculum. So what do you think the impression my generation has of George W. Bush? And then Barack Obama, who has divided this country more so than any other president in the history of the country. So what is my generation, yeah, that's exactly right. What is my generation supposed to think of political parties and politicians? I grew up in the Clinton impeachment hearings. I grew up with a bitterly divided country over the Iraq War. And I grew up in a country that has now been racially and politically divided under Barack Obama. So what we're looking at is the most independent generation in American history. It is the generation that is least likely to openly affiliate with a political party, which I think is a great sign. I think that's a very, very good trend. Because, as you well know, coming from Chicago, I'll tell you, there are people that will tell you they are voting for the Democrat, and they don't care if they are in prison, they don't care if they're dead, they don't care if it's a dog, they're voting for the Democrat. So that's a very good trend, that this generation is so sick and tired of the two-party paradigm that they're taking a step back and they're saying, no, I'm going to tell you what I believe, what I think, and what I want to see happen. That's a really good trend. They're also very resistant towards traditional party politics. There's a reason why Rand Paul, out of all the Republican candidates, gets the biggest youth crowds of any candidate. And there's a reason why Bernie Sanders gets the biggest youth crowds of any candidate. They're contrarian to traditional Republican and Democratic Party politics. They talk about issues, not just do they talk about issues, but they talk about issues in ways differently than the other candidates. Bernie Sanders will get up there and he'll talk in a way that no other Democratic candidate would. And same with Rand Paul. They talk about issues that no other candidate would talk about. And I see such an immense opportunity, because if you're trying to tell me that the best person that the Democratic Party has to rally young people is a 74-year-old socialist from Vermont, I have nothing but optimism for the future of this country. What I love most about what we're seeing today, and then I'll take some questions, is I'm on Twitter all the time, and if you're not following me, please do. I'm very vocal, sometimes controversial, 33-something thousand followers. I'm always fighting back against the stigmas that are thrown at Republicans and conservatives. And the one I hear all the time is, you're just one of those white, angry Republicans. And I just love when they say that. I'm like, yes. So I have this picture I've saved on my phone on my computer, where I have a picture of Bernie Sanders, Martin O'Malley, Hillary Clinton, Lincoln Chafee, and Jim Webb, 5 old Democrats running for president, next to a picture of Ben Carson, Bobby Jindal, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, and Carly Fiorina. So let me get this straight. We're the party of old, angry white people, and you have 5 angry old white people, and we have Ben Carson, Bobby Jindal, and Ted Cruz, and Marco Rubio running for President of the United States. We have 7 candidates under the age of 50. We have the first Indian American running for President of the United States ever. We have 3 Spanish speakers, 2 of them incredibly fluent, 1 conversationally being Ted Cruz. We have 2 Latinos. You know how many Latinos have run for president in the history of America? 4. 2 of them being Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz. So we already doubled our impact with 1 slate. We have Carly Fiorina, I think a much more accomplished and articulate female candidate than Hillary Clinton. We have the most accomplished neurosurgeon in the history of America, Ben Carson. Absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. And what I want us to see as a party do, and we'll have an opportunity to do this throughout the consecutive months, and I'm beating this into the party officials, I say, brag about our candidates. Brag about the field we've been able to put together. We have the most diverse, most qualified, most in tune with the American people presidential field in the history of American politics. Never has a party fielded so many candidates of different ethnic, political, economic persuasions on one stage that are all unified with a very similar ideological point of view. And you want to win over young people, that's the party I want to be associated with. Thank you so much.
So first off, can you tell us a little bit more about the chapters of Turning Point USA from an execution sense, a day-to-day sense? What do they do? What activities do they engage in? How does that change over time as they grow?
Absolutely. Great question. The question was, what do Turning Point USA chapters do and how do they engage over time? We wrote a booklet that I'd love to share with the young people in this room first, but also anyone else who might be interested. It's called How to Organize, Winning the Battle on College Campuses. And it's really our Rules for Radicals book that we wrote for young people and by young people. And those people that do not know, Saul Alinsky famously wrote Rules for Radicals, which I believe Barack Obama has literally sitting on his desk next to his bed every night. So what do our chapters do? The first and foremost thing our chapter does, always, is engage in persistent, aggressive, and effective grassroots activism. That is our bread and butter. So what does that mean? On a college campus such as Berkeley or UCLA or UT Austin, Ohio State University, Florida State University, or University of Miami, we will be there out in the public square recruiting, evangelizing, persuading, engaging, collecting information, registering voters, and really having person-to-person contact. You know what I always say, it's really interesting when you think about it. In a culture where a young person, Joe, or what's your name again? Huh? Sam. So Sam will probably get 80 text messages a day. If he has a pretty active Twitter, he'll get 100 Twitter notifications a day, and he'll get 60 Facebook notifications a day, and 200 emails. However, on average, a young person will only have 3 meaningful face-to-face communications a day. I want to be one of those 3 every single day for an undecided individual on a college campus that is not sure where they want to chart, or a person who does believe in our value system, that does believe in freedom and liberty, that has not been engaged, not been registered, not been recruited. And you would not believe how many individuals we're able to recruit on a daily basis. And before I forget, I just want to plug this in. You're all sitting on an email sign-up card on your chair. If you want to get more information about what we're doing here in the Bay Area, what we're doing statewide, and also nationally, we don't send out that many emails. Sean will attest. They're very uplifting, and they're very encouraging. You'll see incredible results. So if you want to fill that out and just give it to me or give it to Angel out in the back, we would greatly appreciate it. So.
All right. Can you talk a little bit about immigration? Does that play into Turning Point USA's
Sure.
perspective at all?
Immigration's not one of our core issues, but it's one that matters a lot to me. So again, I went to a public high school that was 53% English as a second language. So it was a minority-majority high school. So I was in the minority as a Caucasian in my high school. So it's an issue that I understand, to an extent, not as well as, it's a different issue regionally, mind you. So Chicago is a sanctuary city. San Francisco is a sanctuary city. The lawlessness that has been occurring under this president with the sanctuary city policy has been absolutely criminal, in my opinion. It's terrible, beyond belief. However, with immigration, young people more than not, and I'm just going to be quite frank without putting my own views forward, they are more likely to not support massive deportation. I'm just going to let you know. It's not a great way to engage a younger audience, is round up 11 million people. However, they do believe strongly in border security. Every poll, every person we talk to, border security is a big, big issue. Whether that's a buzzword or whether that can become a reality depends a lot on leadership. However, the biggest part of immigration, I think, that is not talked about, specifically with young people, is how we can keep and retain our talent in our university system and in our economy. What they see personally in college and universities is preferential treatment given to non-citizen students for in-state tuition schools. And that is a big issue that I think a lot more politicians can talk about. So,
what kind of presence do you have in the Bay Area? And what do you suggest to get a bigger presence?
It is growing, and thanks to all of your support tonight, we are going to make a move, hopefully, to bring Angel on our full-time staff as a field organizer here in the Bay Area. So we have a growing network of alliance groups and chapters in the Bay Area. Stanford, up at Berkeley, even we have a growing little organization. Angel could tell you about that. I don't know how that one works. That's different. It's a different group of people, but growing, surely but steadily. And this message works in every region, whether it be the most liberal pocket of San Francisco or deep in the heart of College Station, Texas, at Texas A&M, which is our biggest chapter with over 480 students. Go figure. So it works. It works both ways. So.
All right. I've actually never had one question asked so many times. I have, I think, about 9 or 10 cards with effectively the same question. You didn't mention Donald Trump.
I don't know why I wouldn't mention Donald Trump. Look, I'm always an optimist, probably to a fault. So I'm the guy that says, you know what the best part of being surrounded is? You can shoot in any direction. So I'm always an optimist to a fault. So here's what I love about Donald Trump. 24 million people saw the most diverse field of presidential candidates in political history. They weren't tuning in to see Jeb Bush, okay? They weren't tuning in to see John Kasich. They were tuning in to see the Donald Trump reality show, which then had a little bit of a flowing over effect. Look, without giving the canned talking head answer that you hear on TV and it drives me nuts, Donald Trump has really triggered a lot of anger amongst the American people, and I think there's a lot of validity. Without giving that, you cannot turn on Fox without hearing that. Every show, on whether it be O'Reilly or Hand, Donald Trump has really triggered a lot of anger. Without saying that soundbite, I'm going to say something I think more substantive, which is this. People are angry. However, what the pundits will usually say after that is they will say there is something irrational about the anger. However, there is something completely rational about the anger that Donald Trump is tapping into. And that's what I think is really wrong about the Donald Trump analysis, that somehow he's tapping into this frothing bath of people that are just irrationally angry at the system. And the number one critique I have of the pundits and the talk show hosts that go after Donald Trump is the people who are supporting him are quite frankly very rational about their anger. They're very measured and they're very metered. And they've been angry for a long, long time. And so to connect their anger with some sort of unfounded, irrational train of thought, I think is a big mistake. With that being said, I do have my own personal reservations about a Trump candidacy. However, I always look for the positive, and I think increased visibility, increased airtime, and increased measurement of the Republican field, considering how strong of a field we have, can be nothing but a good thing at this particular time.
So the way you described the situation you came into, it seemed like kind of a green field for Turning Point. There wasn't anyone out there. I thought there were organizations like Young Americans for Freedom, College Republicans. I could be wrong. Is it really as greenfield as you're describing, or are there organizations out there that you could ally with?
Yeah, I mean, they're out there, and I reached out to them at the time, some of them, and didn't always get a response that I wanted. But look, what I always say is this, is that we have 23 million young people, where there's colleges and campuses, high school and campuses on over 9,000 campuses nationwide, if you count all the active high schools and colleges across the country. And there's probably 5 or 6 youth organizations, some of which do great work, like the Leadership Institute. They do really, really good work, and we ally with them closely. And others that have a mixed bag. Here's what I will say: Turning Point USA, we have 45 people on our full-time staff. It is the largest field staff in the history of conservative politics that does this type of work in the history. So what that tells me personally is this sort of work has not been properly engaged into at this level with this sort of strategy and engagement. However, we ally closely with a lot of the young libertarian groups, a lot of the young Republican groups, the college Republican groups, so on and so forth. But from a national level, I would make a pretty compelling argument that the investment we're making with boots on the ground has never been made before and needs to be furthered and advanced. So.
All right, you mentioned libertarian, and that's a good segue. I got a couple of questions about that. Basically, the thrust of it is you seem to be philosophically aligned to a libertarian philosophy or movement. Any connection with them? Any thoughts on your potential connection with them versus Republicans?
So there's an old quote that says, "If you label me, you negate me," which is a really cool way to say I take the fifth. No, I'm kidding. Look, I consider myself an unapologetic conservatarian. I'm socially conservative on more market-type issues, economics. I'm very libertarian. I want the government the heck out of my life with anything that deals with fiscal or economic matters. I believe the libertarian movement, and I know it differs state by state, and I know there's been splinter candidates, but on large has done nothing but positives towards growing the base of the Republican Party to engage people that otherwise would not have. Do I have respect and admiration for the libertarian movement? Without a doubt. At times, I feel swept up in what they're saying, but then I'm kind of brought down to earth towards the pragmatic doctrine of, conservative thought and governance. So there is a ebb and flow between the two. There's an old expression that I use a lot, and that is, I feel conservative around libertarians and libertarian around conservatives. So go figure that one out. It's just kind of one of those, I don't know, I really believe in less government. You don't want any government? I'm definitely a conservative. So I kind of play that game back and forth. If you have not read the Conservatarian Manifesto by Charles Cook, it's incredibly good. I would argue the Tea Party movement is the embodiment of that philosophy, which is, libertarian idealism mixed with good conservative pragmatism. And it's a really good hybrid. But if you can unite a lot of the Rand Paul and Ron Paul, enthusiasm with a lot of the, traditional, Reagan conservative revolution, well, that's a segment that I think can really be powerful. So, yeah, I'm smack dab in the middle of conservatarian. So.
All right. I may have missed something, but my impression from the talk was the only time you mentioned social issues was effectively to say that's not our thing. You kind of dismissed them. I got a number of questions about different social issues, and so this may turn into multiple questions, but let me start with one. Second Amendment. A lot of people are interested in that. How does that play with young students?
Yeah,
do you engage on that?
It's going more and more towards, amazingly, even after an unprecedented push by the media and by politicians towards try to take our guns away and try to anti-gun narrative, young people and America at large are still skewing towards a traditional constitutional view of the Second Amendment. One of our weeks, and we do talk about guns, even though some would argue as a social issue, I say it's not. It's a constitutional issue. I always push back. Social issues are usually not in the Constitution, this is. So we have a week called Guns Save Lives, and it's one of our activism weeks. We have a 15-week activism calendar that we do on college campuses, with each different week being a theme that we believe is an issue that matters to young people, or should matter to young people. And one of those weeks is Guns Saves Lives. And we talk about statistically in areas where guns are banned, and gun owners are demonized, such as downtown Chicago. Murder rates skyrocket. Where private gun ownership is disallowed, you will start to see home burglarization, you'll start to see theft, so on and so forth, skyrocket. And then we also talk about it from an individual rights perspective. And finally, the most effective on college campuses, we talk about it from a female empowerment perspective, because most importantly, on many of these college campuses, as you well know, there is this narrative that has been created about this rape culture, so on and so forth. Well, the best way to stop one of those guys at a fraternity party afterwards, if you're a young lady, would be to have a firearm with you, not a whistle. And, yeah. So. And I think you had another social issue question. Or
Yeah, so let's apply that same question to, let's say, Planned Parenthood.
Sure. So we stay away from life issues and marriage issues. I am pro-life. You might ask why. It is, and I'll tell you why. It is still a 50-50 down the split. It's skewing the other way. We have had still more success with engaging young people around economic freedom, size and scope of government waste, so on and so forth. I'm pro-life. I believe marriage is between one man and one woman, as bigoted as that might be in today's culture. But with that being said, it's not one of our mission statement issues. We believe the best kind of change is targeted change, focused on the Constitution, size and scope of government, economic freedom, individual liberty. Marriage and life, many people push back against this, and I get a lot of, especially from some of our donors and supporters. And on the other side, I get a lot of praise, because some people think that's a very effective strategy. We take the bullets for that and we say, hey, this has worked, this has been successful, we're going to stick to our guns on this, this is our mission statement. And to that, just a sidebar, Students for Life does tremendous work. That's their issue. We wouldn't want to, ever get on their single issue focus, which they've done a very good job on. So,
okay. So you may have partially answered this question already, but on the left, they've got a lot of, I don't know if you'd call it alliances or coalition, but You look at mainstream media, academia, unions, social justice warriors, environmentalists, Black Lives Matter, I could go on. Do you have natural allies? Do you have people that you form coalitions with and work together with?
Without a doubt. So whether it be young Republicans, the college Republicans, Young Americans for Freedom, the Young Libertarians, or the other coalitions and alliances on a broader base scale, whether it be the NRA, whether it be Heritage Foundation, the Cato Institute, Reason Magazine, whether it be the State Policy Network movement that has been incredibly successful. We have a broad-based coalition of alliances that we've been able to build. And by doing so, we're more effective. And our little niche market is 23 million young Americans that every single year enter high school and college that need to be serviced. The Cato Institute focuses more as a think tank, and that's great. We believe that we're a battle tank. That's where we live.
So the question here is, have any of the presidential campaigns reached out to you for help? And I want to broaden that to any campaigns for any office.
I have met every Republican running for office. I'm still waiting for Bernie Sanders to get back to me for debating me. I don't know what's wrong with him. I'd love to debate Hillary Clinton, or at least cross-examine her. Give me that opportunity, I'll take it. So yeah, I grew close to the Governor Rauner campaign staff, and they're now running Rand Paul's campaign rather unsuccessfully. He's not doing great. I know people in the Walker leadership. I think very highly of Scott Walker, being from Northern Illinois. I saw a lot of what he went through. He was heroic. I know a lot of the people running Ted Cruz's campaign, Rick Perry, so on and so forth. So it's they've reached out. We're staying completely out of the process, completely nonpartisan, and we respect all of their ambitions, but we have to stay neutral. So.
Do you see Turning Point as a long-term gig for you?
Without a doubt. So the fun thing about the younger population, so you have 23 million people that are kind of our target audience. But what people forget about that 23 million people is that you lose 25% of it every year and you gain 25% of it every year. So as soon as you think you've figured it out and you've won over a majority and you've got them all properly organized, well, 25% will enter the workforce and 25% new will enter that stream, of course being graduation rates. And of course there's a young adult extension that we are developing. There's a high school extension that we're developing. I'm 21 years old. I'm loving every day of this. I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I get to grow this no different than a Silicon Valley startup. So to go back, way back in my speech, what was my secret weapon starting this whole thing? I started Turning Point USA. So if you look on any of our cards or any of our material, it might not be on your contact card, but it says 217 and a half Illinois Street. It's our address as an organization. I get this goofy look all the time. Half? What is that? What are you from, Charleston, South Carolina? Like, what is that? And I say, quite frankly, this would happen. One of our board members at the time donated a garage to us on Illinois Street in Lamont, Illinois. I went down and I visited it. 218 Illinois was on the right. 217 was on the left. So my gears really started to move, and I said, okay. So we just wrote 217 and a half on the top of a garage, which then became our de facto office. So reflecting back, if Amway Global, Dell, HP, Google, and Apple all started in the garage, we're in pretty good company. So.
Kids hate conservative values, according to this questioner. How do you convince them, especially in light of the influence of folks like Jon Stewart and his appeals to people's envy?
Well, if that's not a false pretense, I don't know what is. So to push back, they don't hate conservative values. They hate a lot of the ways they're portrayed and that they are messaged towards. One of our big slogans, as you said earlier, is "Big Government Sucks." You would be amazed at how that resonates with young people. Jon Stewart's a big problem, in the mass media of the entire pop culture comedic circuit, if you will. I believe firmly that if the party wants to properly modernize, we need to get more of our articulate, more whimsical individuals out there publicly. I'm sick and tired, after every single State of the Union address, just waiting for someone to royally screw it up. Whether it be Mitch Daniels or Bobby Jindal or Joni Ernst or Marco Rubio getting water. So I proposed one simple thing. I said, have Greg Gutfeld give the response to the State of the Union. And because the whole thing's a joke anyway. But I say that somewhat facetiously, and for those of you that don't know who Greg Gutfeld is, he's pretty funny. But Ronald Reagan was so good because he wasn't always so serious. I always say that. I mean, would it kill Republicans to crack a joke at times? I mean, you just look at the difference. I mean, Donald Trump is up there, and it looks like he's at a football rally, right? He's got 40,000 people. He's funny. They switch to the other screen. Jeb Bush looks like he's giving the eulogy at a wake. He's like, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming tonight. Are you kidding me? A little bit of spirit, a little bit of, humor, crack a smile. Anyway, yeah, it's tough. But I mean, I blame our candidates too. It wouldn't hurt. So.
I don't suppose you're available to give the response to the State of the Union.
I take the fifth. So.
What impact on politics is the Muslim influence having?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's disgraceful that we won't call it what it is, which is radical Islamic terrorism, which we need to call it. Yeah. So what is the Muslim influence having on politics? I mean, look, I don't like to generalize. I grew up with students that were of a Muslim faith. A lot of them were good people. A lot of them were entrepreneurs. They're ended up now starting businesses, and they're incredibly, they're risk takers. So I hate to generalize, and I hate to do all that. With that being said, there is a narrative in this country that it's always okay to offend the Christian and to offend the white man, but it's never okay to say anything controversial about the Islamic faith or about the Middle Eastern countries that have women in servitude or so on and so forth. So I think there is an incredible double standard there. And I think it's very dangerous because it's always okay to insult the Christian religion or anything to do with Christianity, but the second you say anything questionable based on fact and merit, such as something crazy like women can't vote in Saudi Arabia, or the safest place for a Muslim woman to be born is Israel, not Iran, or Iran hangs homosexuals. Crazy facts like that all of a sudden drives them absolutely crazy. So I think there is a double standard that has been created there. And without generalizing too much, I think we need to severely push back against that, because it's always okay to insult the Christian or the Jew, but it's never okay to insult, the Muslim. So.
I'm going to wrap it up with this one. I hope people already had a chance to see the jar come around to their side. But beyond that, beyond reaching into your wallet and donating, what else can we do to help you?
Absolutely. Well, it's the 3 M's, really. So the first is manpower. So for all the young people in the room, I'm going to kind of target to this. We have a nationwide coalition alliance that we'd love to include all of you in, give you resources, materials, and buttons, and banners, and booklets, and everything that you might need. We are the #1 distributor of on-campus material that you can imagine. We have this wonderful booklet that I want all of you to give your peers, which is called How to Debate Your Teacher and Win. So it's, for whatever reason, the teachers can't stand it. I don't know why. We have over 100,000 in circulation. We are the #1 supplier of activism materials in the country. Over 1,900 groups have requested them over the last 20 months. So for the young people in the room, we also have a thing called the Free Market Alliance, which allows pre-existing groups to maintain their autonomy, to maintain their leadership structure, but they are an alliance extension or a tangent of Turning Point USA. So we'll supply materials and speakers and funding. They're part of our alliance structure. They can come to our conferences. They can be activists, but they're completely their own animal. So it creates a very similar alliance network to that of which the left has been able to build. We'd love to consider the young people in this room. So the first is manpower. The second is message. There's other people in this that are not in this room that would love to hear this. Please forward our emails to them. Tell them about it. You'd be amazed at how much support we've been able to get just through word of mouth. And last but least, the third M, you can just imagine what it is, which is, of course, money, which always helps. We're a tax-deductible organization. We're a 501c3. We do have a 501c4 arm, which I did reference a couple times throughout the speech, which I probably could have differentiated a little bit, clear. However, all of our operations right now are being run through our 501c3 tax-deductible arm, so that always helps. So anything that anyone might be able to do, if you want to sign up for the card, go to the website, make a donation, anything of that sort. And then also, get young people in your own personal life involved in our organization. So we had 125 young women leaders in Chicago at our Young Women's Leadership Summit. So we went through the list, and I did a lot of research. What I love doing when we have these summits and these leadership retreats, all of them are active on campus in one way or the other for a Turning Point USA chapter or an alliance group. So what I did is I traced back, how did we get connected with these young ladies, these incredibly beautiful, articulate, young, conservative women? And 60 out of the 125 were just made by connections by people who heard us speak, who saw us on Twitter, from an adult down to a young person. So it does make a big difference if you connect us with a young person, you talk to Angel in the back, you shoot me an email after this, something of that nature. It does make a difference. And just one little introduction could amplify into an incredible leadership development that could make real cultural change. So, and thank you so much for, are we wrapping up? Or?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you all so much for coming here tonight. Your support is always greatly appreciated. I look forward to being in touch with all of you. Thank you.